They said the world would end in 2036. But they were wrong. The world ended a long time ago.
Hello.
Hey, Ella. How's it going?
I'm good. I'm a huge fan. How are you?
I'm very excited to chat with you because I'm a big fan of Resident Evil. Listen, this franchise has a very long history of butt-kicking women, and you are the latest in that amazing group. Talk to me about Resident Evil, and I mean, were you playing the games? Did you watch those movies? Were you reading any of the comics?
Yes, indeed. I definitely played the games, much to my parents' dismay when I was supposed to be in bed. I also watched the movies, and I was so inspired by, you know, the performances in that sequence of films. So being able to come onto the series and, like you say, kick some butt as this main character, Jade Wesker, was equally challenging as it was exciting.
No, and it's cool to watch. Now, your character Jade is interesting because on the show, what we get like future Jade, which is you, and then we go, or present, I should say, maybe present time Jade, and then we get a Jade of the past. Did you talk to the other actress to figure out
Tamara Smart,
how does that work?
Younger Jade. It was a very interesting experience, sort of sharing a character in two separate timelines, and an example of great casting with actresses who both have a very succinct and synchronized perspective and view of how the character sees the world, how she approaches scenarios. She's fiery, she's hot-headed, she's unapologetically herself, but she will always stand by her family. And sort of seeing everything that happens to her in 2022 very much gives context as to what decisions she makes in 2036, which can often be quite questionable, but a very confrontational to her past traumas that she then has to deal with.
No, it's fascinating to watch play out. And I think that's one of the big reasons what sets this show apart from some of the other iterations that we've had in the movies, right? What do you think is the biggest difference between this show and the other stuff we got?
I'd probably say the fact that it feels very human. It doesn't feel like a different world, like something else, something that's been invented. It very much feels like something that could happen tomorrow. 2022, the art department did such an incredible job of creating this very idyllic, slightly too good to be true set. And then in 2036, you see sort of humankind implode on itself, umbrella corporations taken over, and you've almost gone, back a few steps, but it still feels like it could happen tomorrow. And you also see Albert Wesker, who's this iconic, figure in the lore of Resident Evil, turned into an actual human being, not just this dude who's wearing glasses and a black coat, So that's really exciting for fans who are familiar with the franchise and also new fans too.
Absolutely. Okay, last question. I'm glad you mentioned the look of the show, the visual designs. I also really dig the special effects. We get a lot of the creepy characters, right? Those creatures. Do you have a favorite, or maybe one that terrified you the most?
The most fun to film was probably the lickers. The liquor sequence. We are really proud of that. We did it we actually did it in one take. It's the whole thing. It was like a ballet between the camera, myself, the other performers, the stunt performers, the riggers, Danny in his green suit, all of the everyone's sort of contribution together made that a really fun sequence. And it felt very true to Resident Evil. I felt like I was in the game.
There you go. Keep an eye out for the liquors, but you're going to love everything else about it. Ella, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been fun.
Thank you so much. Chat soon.
Umbrella, a company besieged by scandal, is now trying to reinvent itself.
The old Umbrella made mistakes. The things we're working on today, they're gonna change the world.
Resident Evil, one of my absolute favorite franchises. Well, they've got a game, they've got movies, they've got comics, they've got it all. And now they've got a show on Netflix. Adeline and Paula, thank you so much for chatting with me about this. Adeline, I'll start with you. Oh, I mentioned all the things that are Resident Evil out there. I'm talking 12 games. How familiar were you with this franchise? And do you have a favorite movie or game?
Ooh. For me, I hadn't played the games, of course, knew about them, but the franchise itself, the movies, of course, I mean, worldwide. I grew up in Hong Kong. There is no shortage of knowing Resident Evil globally. I would almost say like the first movie is kind of like the OG movie from the franchise. So that might be my favorite.
Yeah, I can't beat you some Mila Jovovich. She's amazing.
Exactly.
Mila's so great. Paula, I'm going to switch to you because I want you to tell me about your character because I got a few sneak peeks and I don't know. Can we trust your character in this show?
Of course, why not? Depending on what you want, if you want chaos and destruction, you should trust her. Of course. I think my character is great. Like Evelyn is great. I think she is, she's interesting. She's complex. She's complicated. She just wants some respect and recognition. And she is coming from that insecurity. So that is gonna make her, I don't know, maybe not the best choices for her and for her future and the world's future, but it is what it is.
She knows what she wants and she's going to do what she can to get it. Adeline, talk to me about how this show is different than all those other things that we talked about. What's something that people should tune into this show in particular to see Resident Evil like we've never seen it before?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think for us, what's important to kind of state from the get-go, it is different. However, it is still set in this wonderful world of Resident Evil and Raccoon City. And there are a lot of characters and a lot of creatures that a lot of fans will recognize throughout this. There's a lot of Easter eggs. And the way that it's different is, I think, maybe think about it in terms of you have, for example, Albert Wesker, who is like a beloved known character from the games, who then, let's say, exploring his family line, we created different storylines as to how an apocalyptic world would look like in today's day and age. I think we've got very fascinating characters that are in depth. They are complicated. We talk a lot about, family dynamics, and you also, of course, have the element of horror and gore and creatures and the infected.
Yeah, come for the horror and the gore, but stay for the characters because no spoilers, but you get a little attached. You get a little attached to these people. Okay, last question here. I mean, knock on wood that this never happens, but in today's day and age, you never know. What's the best way to survive a Resident Evil world? You guys have been in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we were to prepare ourselves, this breaks out, how should we survive this? Or can we?
I don't know. I think we have to be prepared, right? And maybe I always think that the way that I would survive, at least for a while, is if I'm prepared, is just to stay put in one place and not be like changing locations, because that's when you change locations, that's when you're traveling, that's when they get you.
Hunker down.
Hunker down. Stay there.
Yeah.
Stay put.
It doesn't matter if you're not in the action, you're gonna survive.
Adeline, are you hunkering down?
No, we spoke about this. I feel like the Billy answer would be to say, be ruthless in your pursuit of what you think you should do in this situation and don't care about too many people. I think my answer is kind of, having done the series now, I kind of like Jade's route. I think me as Adeline would definitely do the research kind of aspect of it, because the best way to beat it is to understand it, right? And hopefully find a cure.
The best way to survive.
But that's how we save those who hunker down too.
I just noticed that I think like Evelyn, I'm only thinking about myself and my survival. I don't.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're gonna have to watch the Netflix show to see how everyone else does it. It's great stuff. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having us.
Bye,
Thank
Matt.
you. Bye.
That was fun. Thanks, guys. Cheers.
drug contains the T virus.
Hey, Lance, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm so excited to chat with you because, listen, whether it's John Wick or White House Down, you always have the coolest characters, and you've done it once again with Resident Evil. Tell us about the character that you're playing, because this is someone that Resident Evil fans will be very familiar with.
So I play Albert Wesker. In this iteration, he is not only a brilliant scientist and a top executive at the Umbrella Corporation, but he's also a single father. So you see, and and for those people who are hardcore fans of the game and think, well, what's that got to do with Resident Evil? You have to see the show to understand how it connects. But the thing that's really great, he comes from the, I got to be careful how I put this so I don't spoil it. Metaphorically speaking, he comes from the DNA of the Wesker from the games, but he's high on the, in my opinion, he's high on the psychopath scale, but he still has enough of a conscience to have some humanity, some compassion, and a lot of that I feel is grounded in his relationship with his daughters. And so he's constantly juggling in this first season, juggling his responsibility to the corporation and his boss, with whom he has an incredibly abusive and dysfunctional relationship with, and in that relationship, she's the abuser, and his responsibility and his loyalty to the safety and the well-being of his daughters.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's fascinating stuff to see these characters that we know and love and add these layers to them. I love the family aspect. You know, I got a sneak peek and I was really into the characters and these developments, but then you're throwing in all the horror and all the craziness. The show's full of like crazy creatures. Obviously wouldn't be Resident Evil without those. Do you have a favorite or one that kind of spooked you?
Well, a couple of unfortunately, I can't remember all the names of the creatures, but there was a creature that's kind of like the creature that comes out of the alien's mouth. So I love those. And there was a giant spider, which just man, that was scary. That was great.
I know exactly the ones you're talking about. All right, before we go, I've been asking people knock on something that this never happens, but how would we survive? Can we survive a Resident Evil world if something breaks out? What's our best hope, Lance? What do we do?
Get a job at Umbrella Corporation, because those guys are hooked up. Everybody else, good luck.
There you go. I'll get my resume ready, but everyone else should get ready to watch Resident Evil over there on Netflix. Hey, Lance, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The T virus can make monsters.
Billions will die.
Hey, everybody, how's it going?
Hi.
Listen, I'm a Resident Evil fan, and I gotta know, when you sign on to do a series, which is really cool, do they send you like all the games to play, all the movies and the comics to read? What is there, like a boot camp to get prepared? Tamara, what was your prep like for this series?
So I came into the show, it was very fresh. I knew that Resident Evil was a franchise, but I'd never played any of the games. And so I watched a lot of people play the games, and that was kind of their recommendation to me, was like, watch the movies or watch people play the games, or even just play the game yourself. And that's how I kind of got a grasp of, how important it is to people and, just how the game works.
Siena, what about you? What was your introduction to Resident Evil and the vastness? Because there's like something like 12 games out there and all the movies. Mila Jovovich, I love her. What was your introduction here?
So I also came into it very fresh, and like Tamara, I also watched a lot of people play the game. So I got a sense of their reaction to the world and then the world itself. And so for me, coming into it, I knew how I felt watching them play the games, and I also wanted to make other people feel that through the screen. It was very humbling, though.
Connor, you played the games, right?
I have.
There you go.
Yeah, no, I played Resident Evil 7 when I was 15, and that like blew me away. So I went back and played most of them. And so, yeah, I came into the show with a lot of the background knowledge to it all, which, is very beneficial to have. But even so, our show is just a continuation. It's completely brand new. And so you could come in without any of the knowledge from the series and it was still, you'd still know what was going on. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the cool things about the show and that I enjoyed about your characters is you're taking part in the kind of the present day time, because we're kind of following two stories. Well, Tamara, you explain this a little more because it's really interesting stuff.
Yeah, so this show takes place in two timelines, our present timeline 2022 with our characters, and then the future timeline, which is 2036 and follows both of our characters. And our two worlds are very different. 2036 is an apocalyptic place, just the whole world has gone to a mess, and Jade is kind of figuring out what is going on. She is just running from the infected all the time, and she is haunted by her past from Umbrella and her father and her sister.
Yeah, and no, it really is. It's fascinating stuff, and I love the way they did it. It's so different than what we've gotten out there. Okay, I'll finish with this because I've been asking some other people. I'm interested in your take. I mean, hopefully this never happens to us, but how do we survive a Resident Evil apocalypse situation? How do we avoid all these monsters and zombies if it happens?
I'm gonna let you answer that, Gamer.
Me?
Yeah, you.
Put yourself in a bunker or something. I don't know. Lock yourself away.
You just got to run faster than the next person,
Oh,
all that.
What? That's a fact.
I would be hiding somewhere for a long time.
Yes.
Listen, we can find out how these characters and more survive on the Resident Evil. It's fantastic stuff over there on Netflix. Thank you guys so much for your time. This has been fun. Listen, I'm excited to chat with you because I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Resident Evil. I'm excited that we're getting this show on Netflix. I got a few sneak peeks and it looks fantastic. Let's talk about why you, as the showrunner, as the executive producer, why did you want to jump on this? Why did you want to tackle it? Because, well, you take it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Resident Evil was a formative experience in two ways. On one hand, playing the games when I was younger, like that was really what horror was to me. Before I kind of got into horror movies, it's interesting. Before I got into horror movies and especially like R-rated horror movies, like I was allowed to play those games, which seems like a bad idea, like in hindsight, but poor parenting in the 90s. So it was formative in that way. And then, I really feel the movies are highly underrated because you see it a lot now, but back then they really took horror and action and sci-fi and really kind of weird sci-fi and blended it all together into something really cool. So it was formative again for me seeing those starting when I was a teenager to just really see that you could do that. It really kind of opened my mind or blew my mind in two different ways. So when this came about, the opportunity to kind of tackle this world and this lore and all the fun of it, like I just jumped in with both feet and thankfully it worked out. Yeah, no, you're right. I think there's something like 12 games, 6 movies. People must like something about it. But speaking of which, Andrew, how do you decide what to take and what to put in this show? Because there's so much to choose from. I think you have to be a little judicious. You know what I mean? There's a lot out there. And there are 30 years of history and we have 8 hours in season 1. So, we have some things sprinkled throughout, but hopefully if we're lucky enough to continue, we will be able to fold in more game elements as the show goes on. But there are some things that people will right away get, especially in that first episode. There's no spoilers, but there's something that terrified me as a kid and I saw it once again. So thanks for giving me nightmares all over again, Andrew. What makes this different? Because it is different. So for those that weren't fans of the movies, what can they expect from this show that's different from what we've seen before? I hope what they can expect is, kind of experience that is very grounded in human. You know what I mean? The idea is, okay, Umbrella exists. It's this crazy company. All this stuff happened, 20, 30 years ago. And if you were a kid growing up in Umbrella housing, basically, Umbrella Town, and you started to realize what had happened and more importantly, like what your dad had done. You know what I mean? In some ways, it's in a very weird way. Like, I think we all have that moment where you realize like what your dad does for a job And you're like, oh, that's who that guy is. Like, he's a different guy when he's out there. That's what these characters are going through. Dad just happens to be someone that may be starting a zombie apocalypse. So, he may be different than my dad, but maybe the same as yours. I don't know.
And before I let you go, Andrew, I was just looking, you used to be on with the Supernatural guys, right? The Supernatural show. Would you ever, I know, I mean, TV, you never say never, but a crossover event with Supernatural and Resident Evil, how cool would that be?
I will say this, it would be awesome. I will say this, Sam and Dean Winchester would do very well in the Resident Evil universe. They would do very, I'm not saying they would stop it necessarily, but they'd be right at home.
100% agree. But do check out Resident Evil over there on Netflix. Andrew, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.